What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Episode 3 of the How to Rap series. In today's episode, we're going to talk about storytelling. It's going to be a good John. It's going to be a long John, but there's a lot of information packed into this one. And just stay tuned. All right. So, welcome to episode 3 of the How to Rap workshop series with Después. I want to start us off with our prompt for the day. I want you to write about what you think goes into a good story. You can write names of authors, writers, songs, movies. Give me elements of what you think goes into a good story. What do you think a good story is made of? Do you like fiction, nonfiction? You like poetry books, maybe? You know, talk about some great stories that you've heard or read, or maybe grandpa or something told you, or uncle told you sitting by the fire or something like this. Remember, these are just ideas to get your brain going. All right. You're going to need these exercises so that your imagination is warm for when you're actually writing. And we're going to be doing some actual writing today. So, yeah, you guys will have 5 minutes. I'm going to get the timer going and go ahead. Alrighty. Nice. Now let's get into the actual presentation. Our objectives for today is we're going to talk about understanding the core elements of effective storytelling, which include structure, character, conflict, and emotion. We're going to develop skills to create engaging, relatable narratives. We're going to build confidence in sharing stories through spoken delivery or written form. And we're going to foster creativity and empathy by exploring diverse perspectives. Now, everyone knows the structure of a story. There's a beginning, middle, and end. When it comes to writing lyrics, there's no difference. It is highly important as a writer that you take advantage of the fact that you are the beholder of time. But never forget that time is before you, so you are still bound to the nature of it. Oftentimes, we are preoccupied with saying the most impactful or clever things, a joke, a reference, a clever rhyme, and we are also interested in it hitting at the right moment. We'll talk about this more in depth when we discuss rhythm and tempo in a future episode. But for right now, I want to talk about methods for starting a verse because that is where the bulk of the reason for your raps will lie. And sometimes in the course of writing rap lyrics, the simple act of thinking up rhymes or trying to start can be incredibly difficult. But at least the best thing you can do is just start. Sometimes the easiest thing to recognize from listening to a beat is the type of flow that you want to use. Sometimes we can get too wrapped up even in what the flow is supposed to be, but truthfully, the best thing you can do is just start to write whatever comes to mind. It can be about anything. This is where our exercises have come in handy. One thing to always keep in mind is that you can change things later, but at least once you get started, the juices can get flowing and you have things to work with. A great example is the first verse of The Listening by Little Brother. Yo, I bought a brand new album today. Decided to take it home, kick off my shoes, relax and play, and spin it for the whole joint. Cause I like to get the whole point. Music is everything to me, and I refuse to rock the piece because you're my favorite MC. All I want is what you would ask of me. High quality and some definition. Wonder why we bootleg like it's prohibition. It's difficult, it's dismissing. I got suspicions that your ears to the streets where you're whispering. Are you listening? I took your LP to DC where some youngins gave me the LD on how it should be. Make sure the beat knock till the trunk pop. And everybody pause when you cruise down the block. Roll down your window when they ask what you playing, but don't nobody care what you're saying. That's what they told me, y'all. Now notice how Big Pooh starts off the verse casually like a conversation. In the audio, you can even hear how the flow comes off kind of lazy. But the fact that he started gave him something to work with. The Little Brother rap group is undoubtedly two rappers that care very much about the craft of rap and the reception of their music. So I'm sure that it was intentional that they wanted to create a song like The Listening to get some thoughts off regarding their perspective of the plight of the artist, that people don't really listen to them or care about what they say. They only care about the beat. But starting the conversation is more difficult than formulating the concept of it, especially putting rhymes together. Through it, Big Pooh was able to place himself in the position of an impassioned listener. Yo, I brought a brand new album today. Now, even though Pooh's start wasn't anything to brag about or chant back, the most important thing to observe is that there was something for him to work with. At every stage of your work as a writer, the best thing you can do to stay afloat is to have tools in front of you. Even though the first verse is only the beginning, it still has a middle and an end to it. You have to be able to lift off and land in a first verse. And you also have to be able to leave room to go for the rest of the song. So, what was the story of the first verse? A listener claims to be a fan of an artist's music. He shares it around to other people who, instead of buying it, bootleg it and try to lecture him on what people really want, a beat that knocks that they can play as they cruise down the block. And no one cares what you're saying. At least that's what they say. Now, I'm not sure if all you guys are familiar with what bootlegging is, but bootlegging is, I mean, it's like pirating, right? I'm sure you guys have heard of pirating. Back in those times when this album came out, the listening about Little Brothers was in 2003. You know, we still had CDs and things of that nature, and people would, burn CDs and rip songs off of CDs and stuff like that to and then distribute them for free. Like pirating is not new. The internet, like pirating is not new. You could buy a CD and then rip the CD and put it on other CDs and give it out to other people. And artists don't get the sales from that. Even if the people wind up like the songs, there's no guarantee that they'll go ahead and buy it back. So uh, this is going to be important as we continue to talk about putting verses together and stuff like that, putting your stories together. Now, one of the most important things about storytelling beyond getting your work in front of you is knowing how to stop. Again, you're limited by time, and this is a locked set of time you're putting together, 16 bars, etc. So the question is, what did you do at the time? The beginning of a story can be bringing out tools that you will show their purpose for, starting a conversation that you will explain the purpose for. But the most important thing about a start is that you've started. So now we can talk about the middle and the end. Well, now that you've set your tools on the table, you have to begin picking them up and using them. You're whether showing the purpose of the tools or you're showing your profession. The point is that at some point, you have to turn in. Turning in, I consider to be directing the attention to something. To the right, you can see Freytag's pyramid. It is also known as the storytelling triangle. It is a skeleton for the anatomy of every story. Notice how the exposition, beginning, actually starts off as a flat line. Something has started. Here is the introduction to characters, the setting of the environment, etc. But there lies an overwhelming question. So what? So what you started talking? So what your rap name is so and so? So what you're wearing Gucci flip flops? So what you had a good day? So what the listener pressed play? Note that the inciting incident is somewhat symbolic between the beginning and the middle. This is the turn in. The reason why it is hard to exactly place this in the beginning or middle is because writers and stories themselves can be very shifty with where the actual moment of impact is. This brings me to a very important point. No matter how many elements you introduce into a story, there is always one singular point of most importance. This is why I say that even if your song is supposed to be about nothing, i.e., wasting people's time, that can also be discerned from what is delivered by the writer. The inciting incident undoubtedly features elements that were brought from the inception of the context, the song. If nothing else, that a person apparently wrote a song and made it available to listen to. Indeed, pressing play can be enough of an inciting incident, and the presentation therefore can still be a cohesive or chaotic representation of the writer's intent. I would say that Freytag's pyramid pretty much speaks for itself upon reaching the inciting incident, especially since most of the control is in the hands of the writer. There are many climaxes to be reached in the settling of the elements of the verse or verses and the song as a whole. And there isn't much to explain about this unless you want to take a formal course on storytelling. But I do want to note two more important things about Freytag's pyramid as it relates to your verses and the completed product of the song. Now, I want you to take heed to these arrows here that show that the resolution is higher than the exposition, which means that your audience has been taken somewhere regardless of how your story unfolds. I like the word exposition because it has a prefix of the word expose. Indeed, the very fact that your audience has been exposed to something means that they are bound to be taken somewhere with it, even if it's nowhere at all. But they have to realize that. It's up to their interpretation. Regardless, the mere exposure to the context means that they are bound to transgress because of it, hence the higher resolution than the exposition. Now, I want you to bear in mind as well that the falling action is shorter than the rising action. There are a number of reasons for this, but regardless, although the falling action is shorter, it is because the context, story, song has to finish at some point anyway. The point of a context changes constantly because it has relevance in a wide range of situations, material and immaterial. And certainly at some point, the question becomes, when is this thing supposed to be over? As long as the story is still going, even when the audience has gotten the point, you are still in the falling action. You can add more elements, but the story does not go backward. Cutting off the song is a fair resolution as well. So if you want to complete your story, I would suggest keeping it cohesive. Now, I want us to also take a look at the second verse of the listening just for the sake of this storytelling episode here. There's also a third verse to this song, but I'm not going to go over the third verse to this song, especially since most of you guys are going to be writing just two verses. And two, I feel like just these two verses are enough to get the point across. So music was my sanctuary, so I take a long listen to hip hop, living out my life in songs, wishing my parents I could get along with them. So I would go inside my room and dig deep inside the strong rhythms. Back when Fresh was the word and Raw was on Prism, Marley on the boards, plus Kane was long living, G rap and they spitting murderous. Bought long live the Kane, sat down and learned every word of it. Sneaking my Walkman in the homeroom playing it. Listen for punchlines, delivery, and cadences. But nowadays, it's like people want to play with it. They hear some good, but don't stop to savor it. Like one night, we was out on my whip with some broads just chilling, playing demos, and asked them how I sounded rocking the mic. One chick told me all she listened to was beats. Thank God for nine. Trying to get pressed on vinyl because MFs buy your CD, but turn around and don't even know your song titles. Like track two is hot and track six is long. Ain't even listening. I'm hoping I get through to y'all. It is clear that the point of this song comes from a deeper place for Big Pooh and Fonte. They are speaking from the perspective of impassioned artists who are now in the position of people who came before them. They notice that people don't enjoy the music as they used to. They don't invest the time or interest in the music as they did or do. Their objective with this song is to reinstill the love and interest in the music as it once was when they were just fans. And I want to highlight something else as well, Big Pooh did a good job in the first verse, of course, introducing the conversation, right? Because that's what's happening. In the first verse, we're introducing the conversation, we're introducing you to the concept, getting you warmed up. By the time you go ahead and do that turn in that first verse, oh, okay, cool. I think we have a good idea what you're talking about. You know what I mean? We know what you're doing. And now you're warmed up, the juices are flowing, the words are coming. So now you get to the second verse. And so now you can just start hitting them, over the head, going really big with the concepts. Big Pooh in the first verse, he mentioned bootlegging. He mentioned, being from the perspective of a listener, getting the album, being excited about hearing an album, sharing it around with people, what people are saying, including saying that they don't care about the things that you're saying and all of that. They just care about the beat. Okay, that's hard. You know what I'm saying? We can understand that. But then when this second verse comes, then it's like, okay, well, now I'm really hitting them over the head. And you're all of the references. Look, he's naming all different types of rappers, people that he liked growing up, people who impacted him and inspired him, what he's listening to in the songs and all of that type of stuff, and just further just elaborating what it seems like the lack of appreciation, you know what I'm saying, from the listener standpoint, and telling his opinion on what has happened and how the environment has been, you know what I mean? And so I'm really just showing you how, you get, by the time you get into the second verse, right? You know, everything should be about ready to go, and that's just typically how it goes. Like typically second verses are better than first verses, okay? But the concept of this song brings me to a final point that I want to make with this presentation before we get to today's exercise. And that's that people are listening, okay? It is commonly said by artists that people don't care about the lyrics, that music is really only about the beat. Let's not forget that these are only the words of people who have this perspective and feel comfortable with speaking in this way. Rap and poetry and writing are enjoyable. There is no reason to defend it in light of the fact that there are obviously going to be people who don't enjoy the same things. But observing what has happened over the years, it is more clear now than ever that we must defend the honor of the craft. We can only do this by uplifting each other to do our best, to be our best, and to fight for the integrity of reading and writing. Regardless of how it goes, we are listening to what people say. We may not catch every word, we may not catch every nuance of expression, but people are definitely listening. As a vocalist, you bear a tremendous weight for holding up the song with the instrumental to bring the listener higher than where they started. meaning beyond a good beat they've never heard before. This is the reason why I do take the profession of rapping, poetry, writing, and authorship seriously. And I empower you to be and do your best to build your confidence in your expression. The voices of support should be louder than the voices of detractors. We were all inspired by somebody or something to do what we do. Hence, we all have a story for why we have begun to take up this hobby or career or interest. The best thing we can do for any of it is to give credit to those who inspired us, to keep those flames lit, and contribute to the understanding of why any of us do anything we do at all. So, for today's exercise, I want you to tell the story of what inspired you to rap. What artists, what songs, what albums have you bought? What encouraged you to take this workshop? Talk about what it's like to be a fan from your shoes. Get this timer going for 20 minutes and go ahead. All right, then. So now to wrap up, as you are more intentional about the act of writing a story, you can only get better at it. Listen to more stories from other writers. Notice what they have done to compile stories and deliver messages. Or leave the job of writing stories to the people who are genuinely very good at it. Regardless, storytelling is a skill that can improve your ability to interact with others overall. And so I hope that this workshop was useful to you in understanding one of the many jobs of being a creator. Don't forget, although it is almost always acceptable to try something, it is also acceptable to leave it to the people who inspired you and to show your support to them for taking you to a higher place. Those are theirs, let them hear. I want to thank you for joining me in this episode 3 of talking about storytelling. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Peace.
You can't imitate me, ain't no copy pasting. Your whole style made in China while I pop in Beijing. I'm the hottest, that's your